Well, Jiho, thank you so much for coming on. Um, it was really enjoyable kind of going through a lot of your story and understanding who you are and where you've got to today and building, not only Axie but Ronin. I would love to understand, just from your take, your story, how you got here, for the viewers in terms of, where you came from and how you got into crypto.
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up as a gamer and a collector. So my dad actually collects insects and fossils, and I'm also Korean, or I'm half Korean. So playing video games was actually like one of the main ways that I could relate to the Korean side of my family. And I think those two hobbies, pastimes really set me up for everything that would kind of come with NFTs, with crypto, with Axie and Ronin. Um, so I actually knew about Bitcoin since 2012, believed in it, but I was never interested in it. And I was never interested in kind of playing around with it or using the technology. And it was in 2017 late 2017 that, a lot of my friends were telling me about Ethereum. I decided to kind of go down the rabbit hole and I discovered CryptoKitties. And with CryptoKitties, right, it looked kind of simple and basic, but it was for the first time a way for me to use my background as a gamer, as a collector, someone who kind of understood biology as well as like playing video games. It was the first time for me to really get my hands wet or my feet wet with the technology. And so really that was my entry point into crypto. Was NFTs and kind of the original uh, you know crypto game. And, I discovered Axie as a community member. I actually found it as a community member. Had already been going on for a couple of weeks, basically, when I found it as a community member and I kind of got obsessed with the vision, right? The idea of a crypto game of collectible pets that can battle and collect something like Pokemon or Tamagotchi that would be relatable to a new generation looking to get involved with the technology. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, and I guess the rest has been an insane journey.
Did you spend any time working in Web 2 before you went straight to
Mhm.
Axie? Like, was there any time there, or did you just go straight to kind of like, okay, Axie, 2 weeks in, and then you became like one of the co-founders? Yeah, how did that work?
I graduated college in 2015. I studied military and economic history, and after that, I started like a small investment fund with some of my friends, and we were also doing recruiting. So we are kind of like going down the more the entrepreneurial path as well. Um, but I was always thinking about being involved in something much larger than myself, being involved in the adoption, proliferation of a new technology, of something that could actually change the trajectory of what it means to be human or what human beings spend their time and their energy and their effort on. So I was always kind of looking for something like that, right? And uh, yeah, I think I was blessed to find NFTs at the right time, at the right moment.
That's awesome. So you always had that kind of entrepreneurial energy, and then you stumbled across the community. How did you and Alexander and Trung, the other co-founders, meet?
We were playing CryptoKitties, so I met Alex and Chung playing CryptoKitties, and that's kind of how we all knew each other. And so when I found Axie, I was like, oh, right, like Alex or Psychout was there. He was able to kind of explain to me a bit more about what was going on. I'd known Trung just very vaguely or whatever, right? So there was this element of, hey, that was cool. Let's figure out what we can do to get this thing to the next level, because there was something there. It was just very primitive, right? And I am a believer in biology, or right, so I understand evolution, right? So if CryptoKitties was like a lungless fish, right, kind of on land, right, it's like what would literally be a salamander or and that's actually right what an Axie is, right? An Axie is kind of like a halfway evolution between a fish and a lizard, right? It's anyway. So I don't think that's the there's something there, right? Where we were thinking about what is the next evolution of this thing going to look like, because eventually we believe that Web3 games will be a major genre, right, or a subsection of the games that humans enjoy and get meaning from.
And so, even today by NFT volume, it is the number one NFT creator in the whole of Web3. On top of that, you guys reached astonishing kind of levels in terms of user numbers, up to like 3 million active users at one point. But for anyone who doesn't know what Axie Infinity is, can we just get the rundown on Axie?
Yeah.
Who, what, why?
Axie is the number one crypto game of all time. It's in the Guinness Book of World Records. It did over $4 billion of volume. And it's kind of like Pokemon or Tamagotchi. You can battle and collect these cute digital pets. And each Axie is represented as an NFT. They have a variety of different genes, which kind of correlate to physical characteristics. Yeah, Axie has an amazing community, right? So, and it's been a long time, right, where Axie's been in the market. And, in 2021, we really went parabolic in terms of adoption. Now it's 2025, and there was nothing that's surpassed it, right? So the legacy of Axie actually increases by the day, especially, right, as there's nothing that really, right, recreates or captures that moment. We do believe that something, right, or that there will be bigger things in the future. It could, right, even be Axie. That's why we say Axie is the next Axie. But it's undeniable, like, what Axie has done to basically put crypto gaming on the map, put NFTs on the map, and introduce an entirely new subsection of the population to crypto.
To anyone in the industry, when you think of Web3 gaming, the instant thing you think of is Axie. To create that brand and that kind of legacy is crazy. And even to see that, I saw you guys, with Atia's legacy, the new version out, you had like 17 million pre-registrations even today, which is just kind of insane. Can we get the story behind Ronin? So, like, what is Ronin? How do they correlate? As gaming infrastructure.
But when we were building Axie, we encountered a lot of issues. It was very difficult to build a crypto game. Gas fees were really high, and a lot of the different tools that you needed basically weren't functional or existing yet. So that's the way to think about Ronin. Ronin is a blockchain, but it's really a suite of all the tools and things you need as a developer to build a functioning crypto game. Ronin is different because, unlike a lot of other blockchains, right, we basically built it around this core application Axie that already had traction, right? So, right, people are starting to increasingly understand that when you're running a platform, you also need to be the owner of the most popular app on that platform. And that's basically, right, the Axie Ronin model, where we built Ronin to serve Axie. Ronin helped Axie really scale to millions of users. And because was such a passionate and large Axie community, that community of users also guaranteed that there's some level of usage and community on the chain that could then be players of other games, right? So we also had a game called Pixels, which absolutely went exponential on Ronin. All right, they experienced something called the Ronin effect. We have games like Fishing Frenzy. They just, had around 50,000 DAU for their first season, and we're running at around like $3 million of annualized run rate, right? So both getting users and volume. We have games like Fableborn, Cambria, Ragnarok, Genesis, right? So, right, we're basically able to catalyze, right, or use the traction of Axie to drive adoption of Ronin. And then, right, there's this like positive flywheel effect where you have more games, more users, and also more experimentation. Right now, despite some successes so far this cycle, Ron did make an all-time high this cycle, right? Most coins haven't. And we saw games actually get real users, real adoption. There's still a lot of questions that need to be answered around Web3 gaming. How do we create replicable success, right? What is the right balance between, right, the Web3 elements and the game elements, and how to balance these economies? How do you balance, right, people who want to make money and people who just want to have fun? And obviously, sometimes when you financialize games, that also makes it more stressful for the user, right? So there are a lot of things that still remain to be kind of fleshed out and figured out with Web3 gaming. But at the end of the day, right, Web3 gaming will win for the same reason that capitalism wins, right? It's like free markets are better. Free markets are better for consumers in the long run. And, me as a user, I grew up playing games like World of Warcraft and Diablo, and I was always running into issues trying to, right, trade my in-game items, right? So fundamentally, we know that there's some base, right, utility and demand for these types of games, or the technology to power these types of digital economies. But there's still a lot of questions that remain. One of the interesting things about Ronin 2 is that we initially were curated and highly curated and more of a closed ecosystem, where you kind of had to get in contact with us to get kind of onto Ronin. We recently, or in February, opened up the chain, right? So now we have like kind of this Cambrian explosion of experimentation, people running a lot of different experiments, some of them really interesting, some of them pretty crazy or strange, I guess. But all right, like all experimentation is interesting and good. And so yeah, that's basically the primer on the Ronin chain, right? Like we're basically we're the most used gaming chain, right? First application specific chain with Axie, and then kind of moved into other types of games. The Ronin wallet's been downloaded over 18 million times. And we have users in a lot of the parts of the world where most chains do not have users, right?
I mean, it's incredible. Like some of the just the overall rhetoric on like Twitter is like, right now is the best time to be building on Ronin. Like the fact it's open, the fact experimental, seeing where Pixels is going, like it's huge. We don't need to kind of stress too much on the, of course, the difficult times of Ronin. The financial side you just mentioned there makes things very, very difficult for gaming, obviously. I want to go into kind of your founder journey, because, of course, that was a difficult period when Ronin had the hack. That is kind of basically made you one of the most battle-hardened leaders in Web3. I think, if you have the likes of SBF, he's not around. If you then kind of Do Kwon imploded, but you guys have just kind of like kept on going and got to like new heights despite everything. So I just want to kind of truly unpack like just some lessons. Like, what's been your hardest lesson in leadership?
I mean, it's crazy. Like, there's actually a Harvard Business School case study on resilience and a response to adversity based on, right, how we dealt that, right? I don't like to dwell on it too much, but I do believe that the strongest communities go through certain existential moments together where they have to band together. You see this with all the great communities. You see it with the Bitcoin community. You see it with the ETH community, with the DAO hack. You see it with Solana, with the collapse of FTX, right? The more traumatic and crazy things that happen to a community, the more well-suited they are to withstand the craziness of crypto. And so I'm incredibly proud of, right, how we dealt with that. Obviously, it's pretty crazy that happened. But, I believe that will also serve to be even a positive catalyst in the future. Last year, we basically said that, hey, we have, recovered and frozen over $40 million of the funds from that incident. And so there's, significant amounts of capital, right, that will be also returned to the network in the future, primarily the Axie treasury, right? And, I'm so proud that all users were, right, made whole and refunded, and we're really able to, kind of battle back from that moment.
Has your sense of like success changed over time? Like when you first started building the likes of Axie, did you think that you wanted to achieve something, and now you care about something more. When you talk about that kind of like the community, I guess the community when I started didn't even exist, but then later on it's there, and now suddenly it's a huge part of your life. Like, is that a kind of almost success metric to you?
Well, the thing that we find about that we see with crypto is that it's overly financialized, right? And it's overly nihilistic. That's the promise of gaming and collecting, right? Is that it's about culture, it's about meeting people across the world. And of course, it's heavily financialized, but there is, right, a certain amount of, right, friendship and loyalty and bond, right? Kind of these bonds that are created, and I think that's the beauty of, right, of gaming, of collecting, right? My father, for example, collects insects, and he has friends all over the world, right? So these types of activities are able to allow like-minded individuals from all over the world to come together to meet each other and bond over their shared interests.
I used to be obsessed with Pokemon cards, collecting trains, completely growing up. Thinking about your younger self, just before you started building anything, what's like the first thing that you would tell them before you went into the kind of the founder journey?
To savor the moment, right? Because you're always going through some crisis or something, and it always seems like you're about to die, or catastrophic event is about to happen, or something like that. And that's basically, right, like being an entrepreneur, right? So, I think just if I were to speak to my younger self, I'd tell them to, right, just kind of be present in the moment and not worry about the future too much. I think I generally do that well, but I would, really kind of focus on even doubling down on that from even an earlier age.
How do you deal with stress? Like, do you go to the gym? Do you kind of just chill out, watch movies? Like, what's your kind of like just way of completely just unwinding?
Yeah, I mean, I think that having a supportive partner is important. Um, so, I'm lucky to be married to the perfect woman. I have my parents around, so I'll talk to them quite a bit. And yeah, taking care of your body is important. Your body is kind of like the thing that will basically determine a lot of how your mind feels, right? So having good habits, but it's a process.
What's something that you've really had to work on as a founder? That you can like be proud of in terms of how you've developed your character.
I used to be quite argumentative, and I think being a founder, right, you just learn to listen, to ask questions, to find common ground. And I think that's helped with our business, with the community, but also just me generally in life. So
so you and the founder used to argue a fair bit, but you've managed to now be like,
yeah, I used to be kind of more of an argumentative person. Yeah.
And how you developed into someone that's less so?
Well, I think you realize, right, that I don't know, nobody's ever really won an argument, right? Unless it's a debate, right? There's a difference between a debate and kind of like, and that you really, when someone is feeling emotional, there's nothing basically that you can say to kind of get them to change their mind, especially, right, if you're kind of being forceful or arguing, right? So
No, that's a really good point. What's the best bit of advice you would give other founders who are looking for success in Web3 and gaming?
it's difficult. I mean, one of the things that we see is that there's no real, right, true model or playbook, right, for success, and you need to constantly be, right, experimenting, innovating, tracking, right? So to me, right, when we started out, that was really the best advice that we got was, you have to do some manual things. You have to just run experiments and track the results. And don't act like, right, you really know anything. And almost, right, like basically run experiments to kind of figure out what you know about the world as it relates to your product or your startup.
Your experiments were probably the most fun experiments versus any other company in the world. It's not just like, oh yeah. let's just try out this new model. It's like let's see how it lands if it's half fish, half salamander.
Well, the thing that we often would do and still do, right, is like you see something that's kind of interesting or working somewhere else, and you're like, okay, how would we integrate that idea within our game, right? For example, right, the idea of play to earn is really, right, like what happens when you when you kind of combine the elements of the principles of Bitcoin mining, proof of work, right, and add that to a game, right? Ronin is like the idea of like kind of proof of distribution, right? It's like Ronin's the thing that right differentiates Ronin is our distribution power, right? Which is also right kind of a differentiated approach from other chains, right? But the idea is that like certain chains should focus on certain things.
Let's jump into Ronin. Let's I'd love to just I suppose end this talk with what does the next 5 years look like for Ronin and Web3 gaming?
Well, Ronin needs to become home to the most innovative player-driven economies, right? So games like Cambria, Pixels, and Axie are really showing that Web3 games become special when you innovate a lot when it comes to the economy. Of course, games need to be fun. That's just table stakes. But when you combine like an immersive game with a very well thought out economy, that's where the fireworks happen. We still haven't figured out all the right aspects of the model. But that's what's really important. And also, right, with Open Ronin, now the pace of experimentation, the kind of the evolution is just having more and more kind of shots on goal and chances at finding right some kind of flywheel that really works. And yeah, what else? I do think that right the space is heading in the right direction with things like Hyperliquid, right? It's like, what is the main idea of Hyperliquid is like get a product that works, that has revenue and uses that revenue to buy back tokens, right? So we're having more of a better incentive alignment. That is kind of in contrast to something like Uniswap, which got a lot of users, got a lot of revenue, but never turned on their fee switch, right? So that was something that I kind of disagreed with, right? So when we made Axie and Ronin, we turned on the fee switch for our treasuries from the beginning, and right, we've actually ingested all of those fees for years now. And right now we're kind of in a good position to, with alts being down and Bitcoin dominance being high, to start actually using those treasuries, in the kind of upcoming periods. So yeah, I think that's basically the path ahead. The cool thing, right, is it's not up to us as the team really to define it. The community and the developers coming on will also do it with us. One of the things that I'm interested in is basically some sort of a protocol level incentive and reputation model. We're kind of see that with the Axie score. What if there was like something like a Ronin score? Basically like, users could have a user score, builders could have a builder score, and then you basically have some sort of incentives, right, for people. So looking at systems like Kaido and virtuals and ethos, right, there's something there where user reputation, builder reputation, and incentives, and this idea of a social graph. And there's something, right, where it's like if Ronin becomes home to the best social graph for Web3 gamers, right, then all the best builders will want to come and kind of target our users and build for them.
I love that. The fact you've so many years of learning about what's the right and wrong tokenomics and kind of starting off with that model and then going open and now thinking about, what about the developers and their reputation score and becoming that social graph. That makes a huge amount of sense. And yeah, I wish you guys all the best in scaling the next 5 years. I have 5 questions that are quick fire to end the call. Are you ready?
Okay, let's go.
One thing you'd change about the crypto industry if you could?
Yeah, more focus on applications. Right?
Is the metaverse narrative dead or just sleeping?
The metaverse is here, man. It's been here. It's not necessarily unfolding, and it will not unfold in the way that people think about it.
What's the worst ever crypto advice you ever given?
That I've ever given?
That you have been ever given?
Oh, that I've ever been given.
Unless you've given someone terrible advice.
I mean, some people will say, right, to ignore ignore what your users are saying, and right?
We'll pass on that one. A crypto buzzword you'd love to cancel.
I don't know. I don't like KOLs, right? Like I prefer to call them creators or something like that. So.
KOLs, that's a good one. Yeah. I don't know why that name got changed at some point. And the last one, which Web2 company do you think needs to be on chain?
I would want to see like a goat farm or some sort of a farm come on chain, because if you can do like just a very simple physical business, right, then everyone would realize that you can literally put every type of a business on chain, right, decentralize, raise money for its ownership through tokens, right, like, and it would be superior.
I love that. Going to like the simplest form of living and bringing it to a digital world easily. Nice. Well,
Okay, man. Well, yeah, it was nice to meet you, and yeah, thanks for having
great
me.
to meet you, and yeah, all the best. Speak very soon.
Awesome.
Cheers.